Imagine if you had to search out a place to buy gasoline so that you could run that car. And imagine if you had to take very great care in where you drove, because if you got too far away and ran out of fuel, there was nobody to help you. There was no gas stations around. It was a troubling time for people that had the first cars. There were many problems, and these problems had to be solved without the help of established businesses. The people that sold cars knew, would give them some idea, but it was such a new industry that there really wasn't much help. Into that scene came the stations that Peter just talked about, and they were able to buy gas from a few places, like bicycle shops, blacksmith shops, even pharmacies that kept gasoline for purposes other than the automobile. But so most of those places kept their fuel in storage tanks and sheds out behind their business, because it was a pretty volatile product to keep in the store. So if you went up to, say, a drugstore and asked, could you sell me some gas, they would say, oh yes, we can. But they'd have to send one of their employees out to the shed at the back where gas was stored in barrels or kegs, and he would take a funnel with him and a gallon measuring can that was a jug. And then he would bring that gallon of gas, walk it through the store and out to the road or the street where the car was, and use his funnel to put it into the gas tank. Now, in the early days, often that gas tank was mounted underneath the front seat of the car, and if the lady had come along for the drive, she had to get out of the car and down onto the dirt street while they removed the cushion that she was sitting on to put the gas in the tank. There was all kinds of problems that made it very difficult for people that had bought the early cars. So many problems that it makes one wonder that the automobile succeeded at all. But it did, and things started to improve from the time that Imperial Oil put up that first filling station. They called these places filling stations then. From that point, things started to improve, and some of the businesses that were already selling a bit of gas decided it was a new industry and it was a good industry to get onto. And they not only put up their sheds at the back to hold the gas, but they came up with better ways to get it out to the car. One of them was a tank that was set on wheels. I thought there was going to be one here today, but it isn't here. It was just a tank that held maybe 30 gallons of gas, and it had a pair of cart wheels on it, and the attendant that would sell the gas would wheel it out to the side of the street or the side of the road, and it had a small hand pump on it that would pump the gas from it into the tank of the car. And this went on for a while, but eventually, as the industry grew, more and more inventions came along to make it easier to put the gas from the tank to the car. The industry started to grow, and the outfits that were expanding themselves to sell gas decided that there was a bigger industry there. And from that time, the cars increased in volume. There was more need for not only fueling them, but selling the oil products and getting into servicing and repairing. And so these companies like blacksmith shops, for instance, bicycle shops, expanded into this new industry. And as the industry grew, excuse me a minute. Sorry, I had a critter got on my ear. Maybe he wanted to listen too. The industry grew, and like I said, places like blacksmith shop, who very often had been brought into service to do all kinds of general repairs, decided that the industry was a good industry to expand into, and it did grow. As it grew, The industries that were related to the horse decreased and often failed, but these industries were replaced by far bigger industry and far more often to do with the automobile. One of the big problems was of course pumping the gas into the cars, and more inventions came out to make that easier. Finally they decided that they would put big tanks under the ground. It was safer that way, and they would set a dispenser machine on top of above the tank in the ground, and that brought about newer and bigger pumping systems to get the gas up into the cars. The gravity flow system was the easiest to do, so they built very high gasoline pumps that had 10-gallon glass bowls up on the top of them, and a big lever on the side to pump the gas. They would pump this gas by hand up into the bowl. The bowl was calibrated in gallon segments up to 10 gallons, so they could pump 10 gallons up into that, or as many as the driver wanted. If he wanted 2 gallons, they could measure the 2 gallons from the calibration on the side of the glass bowl. Then the gas would flow downwards through a hose into the gas tank on the car. These were very modern and very well used all through at least through the 1920s, and a lot of them were still in existence up in the 30s. When I was a child up in the Okanagan, I had a friend whose parents owned a service station, and I took great delight in going up and helping my Uncle Jack to pump up those big levers and make the gas go up into the bowl. Some of the collectors have these pumps these days, and they're quite popular to sell for a lot of money. The hand pumping became a bit tiresome, so some genius invented an electric motor that, with a pump on it, would pump the gas from these tanks in the ground up into the glass bowl. And they pretty soon after the electric part of it came into, they came up with new calibrating devices that would more accurately calibrate the amount of gas that was being sold to the driver. Okay, and I was just going to conclude by saying that as time went on, they became more modern, and until nowadays, they became called service stations. The filling station dropped, and they became called service stations. But now they have changed it pretty much, because they're not service stations anymore. They call them gas stores. And you can go into the gas stores now, and you have to do the work yourself. There's no servicing. You pump your own gas, you fill out your own credit card, and do it all into the pumps. And if, by chance, you want to, after that's done, you can go into the store. You can perhaps make a few non-car related purchases. You might even buy a cup of coffee. Times have changed.